I am excited to introduce today's keynote speaker, Dr. Arthur Levine. As Jim said before our lunch break, Arthur's a distinguished scholar with a fitting title, Distinguished Scholar of Higher Education at New York University. He is also President Emeritus of Teachers College at Columbia University and President Emeritus of the Woodrow Wilson National Fellowship Foundation, currently called the Institution on Citizens and Scholars. Among his many accomplishments, he has been a faculty member and the chair of the Institute for Educational Management at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, president of Bradford College, and senior fellow at the Carnegie Foundation, and he was the founder and first president of the Woodrow Wilson Graduate School of Teaching and Learning. Wow, if you're not exhausted, I don't know how he does this, but if he weren't busy enough, Arthur has authored 13 books, including his most recent, The Great Upheaval, Higher Education Past, Present, and Uncertain Future. And his writing has been published in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, and many others. He has received a number of awards, including 26 honorary degrees, as well as, yes, please, as well as Carnegie, Fulbright, Guggenheim, and Rockefeller Foundation fellowships. He is a member of the American Academy of Arts and Science. Arthur, we're lucky to have you with us today. Without further ado, the stage is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. But I got to tell you, as you described the speaker, I kept being really worried that I had to follow that guy. I'm really, really happy to be here today for 3 reasons. The first is, it's a real honor to be speaking to the leaders of America's community colleges. The second is, I believe deeply in the mission and the work of community colleges. I created the Community College Research Center at Teachers College, and I've spent this past year talking with community colleges and community college systems, urban, rural, suburban, in every region of the country. And third, I'm thrilled that you're willing to listen to me. The only person on this stage who hasn't received an award today. I could have lived with that if there were fewer of them. Okay. I'm going to talk to you for a relatively short period of time, 20, 25 minutes. You don't know the half of it. I promise it's going to seem much, much longer. I got to tell you one other thing. The last course evaluation I received said, if I only had 20 minutes left to live, I would want to spend them in Arthur Levine's class. Because every minute with Arthur Levine feels like an hour. Okay, by those standards, we got a full day together. Look, about a gazillion books have been written about the future of higher education. So Scott Van Pelt and I decided another was desperately needed. but we thought the approach needed to be different. We believe that to understand the future, you got to look in three directions. One is backward, historically. We've been through a period of profound change once before in U.S. history, the Industrial Revolution. And we're going through the same stages they went through then, as the little religious classical college became universities and what were then called junior colleges. And the way this one worked was, there was broad criticism. Higher education wasn't relevant. It cost too much. Entirely different issues. And what higher education did was, it denied the criticisms. And then what followed was a period of experimentation. They changed everything. Who the students were, who the faculty were, who the subject matter was, how the curriculum was, everything was up for grabs. Then some models emerged, four in particular. One was the research university at Johns Hopkins. A second one was the land-grant college, combining practical and liberal arts education. A third one was MIT, an entirely technical education. And the fourth one was the junior college. What followed after that is all four models diffused through higher education. But it was like Dodge City. They did everything differently. They couldn't agree on how long a course was. They couldn't agree on what a baccalaureate was. They couldn't agree on anything. It became necessary to standardize. So they created the police force, accreditation. Amazing how some things don't change. And they also created a common unit, the Carnegie unit, so we could all measure how quickly students were progressing in higher education. And finally, they integrated the whole thing. Where we stand today is, we are somewhere between experimentation. If you visit community colleges all over the country, as you all know, there are a cornucopia of different experiments. But it's also beginning to emerge the models that are going to guide the future of higher education and the future of our community colleges. You have to look forward. That's the second way you got to look. The nation's moving. We're going from the Northeast and the Midwest to the South and the West. Race is shifting. By 2040, whites will be a minority in America. The fastest growing populations are those that are least likely to attend higher ed. We're aging, and we're coming from abroad. The combination is different in every state. Each state has its own realities. Some counties have their own realities. But we know what the consequence has been of some of the demographic shifts. We can see it in community college enrollments over the pandemic and even into the present. Economics. The United States is shifting from a national analog industrial economy to a global digital knowledge economy. 90% of all new jobs require some post-secondary education. More education is essential for Americans. Industrial and agricultural jobs are disappearing. Technology. We looked at three knowledge organizations, three knowledge industries. We looked at film, we looked at music, and we looked at newspapers. It was the same story over and over and over again. They managed to overcome government regulation. They managed to overcome court decisions. They managed to overcome new technologies, television, radio. But they were undone by digital technology. It's an interesting story in terms of what could happen with us, but let's talk about that for a second. So after Scott and I looked in those three directions, here's what we found. 4 major findings. 1, new non-collegiate content producers, for-profit, not-for-profit, ranging from publishers and software companies to local museums and zoos, are all entering the higher education market. They're driving up competition, they're driving up consumer choice, and they're driving down prices. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I want to talk about Coursera. Coursera is a publicly traded MOOC, massive open online course platform. Its enrollment went from 53 to 78 million during the pandemic. But now that the pandemic's waning, its enrollments are 92 million. The fastest growing area is traditional age college students. And as you all know, the pandemic didn't treat higher education equally as well and works particularly hard on community colleges. Now, Coursera offers courses from the top universities all around the world. Cutting-edge companies, Google, Microsoft, Goldman Sachs, Amazon, Alibaba, L'Oreal, Procter & Gamble, preeminent cultural institutions, museums, libraries. Let me give an example. Google offers an IT certificate on Coursera. It's a 5-course sequence which can be completed in about 6 months, studying 5 hours a week. The cost is $49 a month. You can quit anytime you want. By the time you complete it, you will have gained Google certification and earned the equivalent of 12 college credits. So the question becomes, how do we compete with this? How do we compete with cheaper, faster, brand name providers? And they're doing it not only in vocational programs, they're also doing it in the liberal arts. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. In this city, the Natural History Museum has a doctoral program and awards master's degrees in teaching. Google has 78 certificate programs, Microsoft has 77, and PBS is the leading provider of professional development for teachers. What are students going to choose? That's the real question. This stuff's growing. What are students going to choose? Second finding, with near universal access to digital devices and the internet, students are seeking from higher education exactly what they're getting from the music and film industries. 24/7 access to content, any place availability, individualization, unbundling, low cost, and choice. Third finding, the dominance of degrees and just-in-case education is going to decrease, and non-degree certification and just-in-time education is going to increase. Okay, let me turn that into English and say that by just-in-case education, I mean for most of our degree programs that we offer students that aren't in CTE, is we're offering the set of skills and knowledge we think they may require for the future. And what I'm saying is increasingly students are going to come to us for certificate programs. And they're going to want it just in time. Teach me Swahili by Thursday. Unless you can do it more quickly. I mean, that's a whole week. Okay. What's causing this? Part of it's automation. We're really beginning to lose jobs. And it's not just low-tech jobs. It's not just low education jobs. 53% of the jobs of doctors and lawyers are going to be automated according to McKinsey. Another reason is the half-life of knowledge is declining. It's getting shorter and shorter every day and needs to be updated regularly. And COVID. COVID changed the job structure in America. Now, what we're going to see is an increasing demand, a growing demand for upskilling and reskilling throughout life. It's booming. And if I had to put my money down right now, I'd say that's going to be the new majority in higher education. And all of this is just shocking to me. I recently went to visit a publisher. And I'm sitting waiting for him to come out and meet me. And I'm looking at his walls. They're covered with books. And he comes out and he says, you know, we're not in the book business anymore. I said, oh. He said, we're in the knowledge business. And I think he saw me roll my eyes. And he said, let me give you an example. Subtext. Let me give you an example even you can understand. Okay? We're offering professional development, just-in-time education for teachers. We're in 12,000 schools. At the time, I was president of Teachers College, and he had my complete interest, since I knew of nobody with that kind of penetration. And I said, I thought I still had him. I said, where are you getting your content from? He said, oh, we hire full-time content providers. I thought about that for a few moments. I got to level with you. I don't know any full-time content providers. None of my parents' friends, none of my neighbors are full-time content providers. So I asked this guy, what's a full-time content provider? And it turned out we just had different names for it. He called them full-time content providers. I called them professors. But I couldn't give bonuses at the end of the year. And I couldn't give stock options. I thought I had one more straw. I said, what about certification? And he said, yeah, we're still working on that. So I left with a small smile on my face. They're not working on it anymore. They got degree granting authority from the state. They're now a very serious competitor of mine. Okay, fourth, the industrial era model of higher education, focusing on fixed time, fixed process, and teaching, is going to be eclipsed by a knowledge economy successor rooted in fixed outcomes and learning. And what it's really going to be driven by is how students learn. We don't learn any two subjects the same rate. I can't learn two different subjects the same rate in all probability. And what we're going to end up doing is giving you the time you need to be able to master those skills. We don't care how long you studied. What we care about is what skills and knowledge have you achieved. Imagine you go to the laundry, okay, and you have your dirty clothes, and they hand them to the proprietor, and the proprietor says, how long do you want me to wash them for? I don't care how long he washes them for. What I want are clean clothes. That's going to be the new standard in higher education. Show me the outcome. What's going to happen at the same time is this is also important for equity. All of our students don't come with the same background, with the same speed of learning. We need to provide the kind of education that students are capable of performing successfully at, which will vary from student to student. One thing, when we move to outcomes, if we do move to outcomes, outcomes are source agnostic. It doesn't matter if I learned the skills and knowledge at Coursera, or your college, or even on Wikipedia. All that matters is that I've mastered the knowledge. Okay. I actually do have some good news here. But that's in the 25th, 30th, and 35th minute. I don't have that time. Okay. Every college and university in the country is going to be affected by these changes, but in different ways. 10 to 20% are likely to close. At particular risk are small, private, low selectivity, low endowment colleges in the Northeast, Midwest, and Middle Atlantic stage. They're demographically challenged and weak financially. Some colleges and universities are going to be able to adapt to this incrementally, particularly wealthy institutions that have the luxury and the time to observe what works at colleges and universities that are forced to change more quickly. The big winners there are likely to be research universities. We're going to need researchers. We're going to need them to be trained somewhere. We're going to need their research. And some residential colleges, particularly the elite residential colleges. Only 18% of all college students today are full-time, residential, and 18 to 24. That 18% are still likely to look for a residential college, and that'll save many. Okay, the rest of higher education is likely to be disrupted. At greatest risk are regional universities and community colleges. And the reason is they have populations that are highly part-time, that are working, that are older adults, who are the kinds of students who are flocking to Coursera. They're being joined by traditional students as well. Look, I got a confession to make. I don't like a lot of these findings. I didn't set out for these findings. I'm a product of traditional higher education who's taken a few courses at community colleges. I've spent my career in traditional higher education, and I really fear these changes will promote inequity, two separate and unequal systems of higher education, one for the wealthy, one for the less wealthy, and a loss of all common learning in a country that's deeply, deeply divided and is losing track of a common set of facts and culture and history. So I'm going to offer 5 bits of advice, and this is the good news part. Let's start with this before we get to the good news. Don't plan on business as usual. We spoke to a lot of leaders this year, but mostly through the pandemic. And they viewed COVID as an interruption, sort of like a hurricane, an earthquake, a forest fire. After they clean up, their institutions can return to 2019. Not going to happen. We got to look forward, not backward. COVID was an accelerator of things that would have happened over a much longer period of time. Proliferation of new providers, online learning, closures, just-in-time education. The pandemic revealed a world in the making. And what it means is This is real. Can engage in magical thinking. I don't know how many times I've talked to people who said, we've heard it all before. Higher education was going to change dramatically. Didn't happen. Can't believe in institutional exceptionalism. There are no institutions that are immune from these changes. Can't engage in short-term thinking. Quick fixes. Can't believe the problem is better marketing. Campus politics can't stop the changes. Relationships between trustees, faculty, and administration. Everybody's got to make this happen. Second suggestion, recognize colleges and universities are in the ed business. Not the campus, not the degree, or the credit business. Railroads thought they were in the train business, not transportation. Movie studios thought they were in the theater business and TV business, and they never saw Netflix coming. Need to ask on every campus, what business are we in? Not the same as asking what business are we in now. Can equate current practice with the business we're in. And it's real important to recognize traditional methods of distribution, face-to-face instruction, maybe liabilities. Traditional products may be outdated, like the 15-week course. And consumer taste may be changing. No tomorrow, third, will not be a repeat of yesterday. Wayne Gretzky put it best: skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it is. Monitor competitors, demographics, job market, consumer tastes. Fourth, really restore the connection to the street. Universities and colleges are most successful when they have one foot in the library, which is all of human heritage, and one foot in the street, which is the real world. And when the world changes quickly, they lose traction with the street. What we need to do is restore that traction, to update and modernize programs, eliminate studies in buggy whips, add all the things you know work: career counseling, apprenticeships, practical minors. But maybe the most important thing here is we need up-to-date technology and partnerships with business. I saw an incredible example of why that was essential. I visited a community college, and they were thrilled. The corporation down the block had just given them some new equipment. They never asked why they gave them that new equipment. The answer is it was out of date. They bought new equipment. So what it meant was today, that college was training students on equipment that was 2 generations old. And tomorrow they take a step forward and train students on equipment that was only 1 generation old. Partnerships with business are essential. We can't possibly keep up with all the technology. They need the people we train, we need the equipment they own. Those partnerships are what are going to guide the future. Okay. Make institutions distinctive. Give them a value added that distinguishes them from their peers. I want to tell you 2 stories. They both tell the same story, that community colleges have to be inextricably intertwined with their communities. I want to tell you about the Wisconsin idea. Charles Van Hise in 1905 declared the boundaries of the University of Wisconsin are the borders of the state of Wisconsin. Under his leadership, the university developed partnerships with farmers and agriculture, business, government, the public, continuing education. Lincoln Steffens, the muckraker, wrote an article about this. And he said, you know, you were just as likely to see a professor from Wisconsin on the train going into the fields as you were to see that professor on campus. They engaged in education targeted at what the community needed. They engaged in research. Now, I'm not talking about abstract research. I'm talking about very practical stuff. They created lab stations, skunk works, extension education. When Van Hise was asked by a legislator what contribution his university made to the state, his answer was, we invented the cow. He wasn't far off. They improved breeding, they improved yield, they reduced costs, products were much better. They did that at the University of Wisconsin. How could the state in that day and age afford to lose such an institution? I have one more story. You know, it's about a different approach, same theme. I've visited a lot of really interesting and good community colleges in the last year. But one example struck me. I recently went to Amarillo College in Amarillo, Texas. The president told me about a student named Maria. She's 26, she's Latina, she has children, she works 2 jobs, and she attends part-time. And then he told me something I nodded to but didn't believe. He told me the college is planning its entire program around Maria. I said, oh, that's good. Next day, I went to the community fall orientation. I was skeptical. The president certainly talked about Maria. And then what followed was that faculty and staff also talked about Maria. They were planning a college for Maria and all the Marias in their district. They got up and talked about all they had done, faculty, staff, all they had done to make education better for Maria this past year, and all the things they were going to do to make education better for Maria. They organized their plans in terms of the 5 C's. First, they knew who their customer was, and they knew who they wanted for their customer. They wanted to make that education convenient for her. I'm not saying low quality, I'm saying convenient. They wanted the content and the delivery Maria needed for her future. They wanted connections to careers, to her family, like this conference theme, and to the community. And finally, they wanted to make this affordable for Maria. Okay. Each one identified the future they wanted in very realistic and practical terms. One in terms of the students they wanted, the other in terms of the services they wanted to provide, and the relationship to the community. They were real, they were tangible, and it paid off. Henry Adams, who was the scion of a family that produced 2 presidents, went to Harvard in the mid-19th century. He lamented that he received an 18th century education that didn't prepare him for a world plunging into the 20th century. The classical college was dying. The university and the junior college had not yet been born. The models that would guide the future hadn't been created. This is a time, that was a time, much like the present. Look, we all know a transformation is coming. The present can't be sustained. The transformation demands innovators and visionaries to launch and pragmatic dreamers to bring to fruition. It's a time to reimagine. We have the capacity, we have the daunting challenge to build, to create the community college for the digital knowledge economy. We can't turn our backs on it. It'll occur, the change will occur anyway. This is a generation, the people in this room, who can shape the future of community colleges, or their future will be shaped in spite of us. Only one other generation has had that opportunity. I can't think of a better group of people than the people sitting in this room to make that new future, to make that new community college a reality. Thank you all very much. Thank you all very, very much.
Arthur, thank you so much for those inspiring words and for sharing with us some of your wisdom that will definitely help us shape some of the policy as we're moving. I know that you gave us a lot to think about, but we do have some time for a few questions. And for the audience,
Could they just applaud instead?
Oh. Let's get one more round of applause.
I was teasing, stop.
All right, so we do have some microphones throughout the room. We would ask anyone that is interested in, can see some near table 10 and some near table 13. Anyone that's interested in asking Arthur any questions, if you could make your way to the microphone, we'll call on you one by one, and we'd ask that you make your questions as concise as possible to allow him time to give us some more insightful answers, but more importantly, that we refrain from follow-up so we can give everyone a chance to go ahead and ask their question. I believe we have the first brave soul over there, Raja.
Can I ask for a favor? Tell me your name and where you're from when you ask the question.
Absolutely. My name is Reza Jafari. I'm an immigrant to the United Nations, to the United States, but I'm an advisor to the UN. I'm the trustee and the vice chair of the Board of Trustees at Chesapeake College in Maryland, small rural college that you referred to. I cannot tell you how important this was, the message that you brought to us. From the bottom of my heart, first of all, I wanted to say thank you. But there was
You're very welcome. Thank you. Are there other questions?
Yeah, yes. This was half of my question. The question is, how would you see the artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality that we are already discussing with some places like Coursera is going to either replace our faculty members or extend the capabilities and capacities that they have, that they're providing it to our community? Thank you.
That's a great question.
Yes.
AI, VR, augmented reality are going to be incredibly powerful. And if you can imagine, a student and I, the students from Japan, I'm from here, are each taking a course at your school. And I've sort of spaced out a little bit, and I turn to the student from Japan and nudge her and say, I didn't catch that last comment. It's translated into Japanese and back into English. The professor asks us to prepare a project together for the next class. And we do that. I asked her one day if she'd have tea with me after school. Given the increasing number of students who are only attending part-time, who are only showing up to take a course, why do we still need campuses if we can do all of that? I asked students, what do you want from college? Older students. And they said, I'm looking for convenience. In-class parking wouldn't be bad. I'm looking for service. They didn't say that. They said convenience. Service, low cost, up to date. And the scenario I just gave you is all of that. With VR, we can give students lectures about France in the 14th century, or we can take them there. They can walk around, they can smell it, they can see it, they can touch it. Travel. I was reading about travel agency, The Future. And it said, they're going to take you there. Walk around the beach, go into the restaurant, you realize how crowded it really is, how small your hotel room really is. If you can do all of those things and make them real, what can education become? How does traditional sage on the stage compare?
Thank you. Young lady?
Hi, this is Kara Sullivan from the San Antonio, Texas area. I'm the student trustee. So I just wanted to ask, because I know we talk a lot about student type and all the different students that community colleges serve. So I was wondering, with the rise of dual enrollment and dual credit and also the workforce certification programs, it seems like there's kind of almost this merging of trying to have outcomes-based and industrial model of education. So I'm wondering how you see these new programs fitting into that model that you're talking about, of what that's moving toward a more outcomes-based model.
Tara, that's an incredible question. And the reality is, I never could have thought of a question like that when I was your age. Let me tell you what I think. We're not going to drop one and go to the other. We're going to try to do both. And you can see it in schools right now. Increasingly, states are testing teachers on student achievement. At the same time, they are fixing the curriculum and fixing the length of time you spend in school. You can't fix 3 variables and expect to have anything that makes any sense. If you're fixing time and process, outcomes are going to vary. If you're fixing outcomes, time is going to vary. Process may vary. So now we're trying to do it all, and it's a terrible mistake. But what's going to happen, I think, is that the movement is going to be inexorable. Thank you. And we will move in that direction. But it'll happen in dribs and drabs. Remember I said after the diffusion of the reforms of the industrial era, what happened was it looked like Dodge City in terms of unlawfulness and unruliness. That's what's going to happen. And what we'll do is we'll develop common rules and common agendas and common definitions for outcomes, but it isn't coming this week. Did I answer your question? I leave out a part.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, now we'll go.
Hi, my name is Courtney Whitstruck from Nebraska. And first, I'm really happy that Carrie was the one who set up this microphone, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have been able to reach it had anyone else done it. So thanks for that, Carrie. My question is about international education. And I know other countries have different systems and methods of education, like specifically my personal experiences with Germany and the Meister apprentice programs. Do you foresee other countries evolving in the same way? And if you do, is it via a concerted effort to standardize, or just via evolving and happenstance?
Thank you.
Oh,
And
welcome.
remember what I said. This is really a period of experimentation. We're not sure what works. So we're trying a lot of different things and seeing what's successful. In the end, what will happen is, when you look at programs like Germany's, which has 2 features that are very important. One is there's a clear connection between education and work. Not only work, but with work. And it has ladder programs. So I can start at the lowest level, pre-professional, sub-associate degree, and work my way up to a doctorate if I want, as I need it. Education is going to be more and more like that. And you know what? So yeah, I think we're going to move in those directions. Did I answer it?
Thank you.
Tara, I forgot to answer one of your questions.
Thank you. Yes.
And you asked me a question about education blending, how high schools and colleges are blending. The education system we have right now is a historical accident. In the 17th century, we created education grades 1 through 8, and we created higher education. In the 19th century, this new institution came along called the high school. And we had no clue what to do with it. Because colleges were taking students who were 12, 13, 14. They were competing head on. And after a little while, they finally managed to squeeze the whole thing together. If we'd created our entire system in one piece, the flow would make much more sense than it does to have these. We have one set of schools that has a different reward system. It has different texts. It has different requirements. It has different hours. It has different calendars than the others. That's going to change. What we're talking about now is as we move to competency, outcomes, you'll move according to mastery. And that means that the boundaries between high school and college won't be as clear, or 4th grade and 5th grade won't be as clear. The other thing that's really important to think about in terms of dual enrollment, 2 things are happening simultaneously that I can see now. One, this has been a real boon for a lot of community colleges. Those numbers have been going through the sky at some schools. But the 2 things that are happening simultaneously, just be aware of it. The number of young people is decreasing. High school enrollments are falling. That market can only thrive for so long. The second thing to think about is that 4-year colleges are also losing enrollment. So what they're saying is, God, look at all those high school kids who could take our courses. And competition has increased between 4-year and 2-year schools for dual enrollment.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I gotta make this lower. I'm Samantha Vave from Lansing Community College in Lansing, Michigan. And just this morning, I was reading a study that says that human IQ is increasing about 20 points. And we know that Gen Zers are the most socially conscious and globally aware of any generation. And obviously, everybody in this room, myself included, loves higher education and community colleges. But when we look at these young people who have so much at their fingertips, what is the value that we add? The answer that comes to me is wraparound services like counseling and housing and maybe access to a health center. But I would like to know what your view is. What value do we add?
I clearly think that we add all kinds of value. But the big issue is, I've visited schools that have said, should we add this program? Should we add that program? And I said, if they were career programs, I'd say, why don't you ask employers? They're the people who can tell you what they want. In terms of students, you could add all kinds of things. You could add all kinds of co-curricular activities, and nobody will come to them because participation in non-curricular activities is going through the floor at community colleges. Given all of that, talk to the students. Talk to the students you want. Talk to the students you hope will come to you. Talk to their families. Talk to their schools. Find out who they are and find out what they want. Don't guess.
Thank you.
I was intrigued by your example of going to Amarillo College and meeting Maria. I'm not sure if we know the kids or the extended family. As I was waiting here, the first young gentleman said that he was an immigrant to the United Nations. I look at education system as the United Nations in one sense. How do we go about making those rapid changes that we need to do in education when we have power sources that each has their own rules and regulations? And then we have a Security Council that makes the rules, and at the local level, we are not able to make those changes. So how do we go about making those changes? For Maria, the kids and the extended family, in addition to blended families.
Let me ask this. When you talk about those power centers, are we talking about the state? Are we talking about accreditation?
Correct.
Are we talking about the faculty? Are we talking about...
Well, it depends on where you're at, but state and accreditation as well as, yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, Zeke Hernandez, I'm a trustee in Rancho Santiago Community College, Santa Ana, California, which is central Orange County, Southern California, near Disneyland.
No, I'm not going to say that. Okay, so thank you, Zeke. The reality is, accrediting associations realize they're in the same shape we are. I testified before the Senate Help Committee. Higher education, loans, pensions, some of those words are correct. But in any case, the senator from Massachusetts tore me apart. She said that at what point should we close colleges? What graduation rate? And I said, well, if you're graduating less than 50%, that would seem to be pretty bad, wouldn't it? She nodded. And I said, but if you choose that as your cutoff point, you have to close every community college in the United States. So I thought I had her. And she said, okay, so what's the number? 0%, 2%, 4%, 5%? It's not the fact that she outsmarted me. Some days I think of incredible answers I could have given her while I'm taking my shower. That's not the question. The question is, accrediting's on the run. Government doesn't like accrediting. And remember, that senator from Massachusetts is a Democrat. And the next question came from a Democrat that was equally hostile. Democrats have been thought to be the friends of accrediting. Go talk to the Accrediting Association. I met with the board at HLC. They realize new things are necessary, and they're really thinking about planning with them. Tell them what you want, tell them what you need. And with states, I found that states, when I was at Woodrow Wilson, we had a program for different states, and we wanted to change their teaching, we wanted to provide scholarships, and we wanted to change their ed schools. And the first stop I'd make would be the governor to sign them up. Then the next stop I'd make would be the legislature. Oh, and it was also high-need schools, high-need kids. And the blue legislators, I'd say this is all about equity. This is about fairness. And I'd describe the program. With the red legislators, I'd say, this is all about economic development. If you want a future, you got to do this. I was selling the same program to both groups. Need to speak their language. That's going to be critical. Can't talk academies, have to talk practical politics with legislators and governors.
So with that wonderful message about trying to speak the language, I unfortunately have to share we do not have time for any additional questions at this moment, but we'll try and see if we can accommodate your questions individually later. Thank you for that. Please help me welcome our chair, Mr. Jim Cooksey, to the stage once more.
And I want to tell you, before I close, this is an incredible group. The future of community colleges have never been in better hands, and I wish you all good things in the years to come.